So once again, welcome to the joint webinar by Coventry University and EBN on extended reality solutions, this time for the future of healthcare. I say this time because it's the second edition of the webinar series hosted this year, bringing together the XR industry, academia, startups, corporates, and business support communities. As said, today we're exploring the potential of XR and AR and immersive learning strategies and showcasing how you as participants can unlock new business and learning opportunities in the healthcare sector. We'll have plenty of experience and examples of crossover between academia and practical application in businesses. We have an impressive lineup today, and before I introduce them, my name is Bram Pauwels. I'm the CSO at EBN, and thank you for joining. Today with us, again, an impressive lineup from Coventry. It's going to be a busy 1 hour. And that said, of course, it's an interactive session, so feel free to put your questions in the chat. We'll have a quick Q&A afterwards as well. If you have burning questions, raise your hand or put it in the chat, and who knows, we're going to interrupt the speaker and see if we can extend their contribution with your question. That said, we're pleased to have the colleagues from Coventry University with us. Paul Fairburn, Innovation Director, Coventry University, Abigail Green, Assistant Professor, together with Mark Gilby and Sam Clark as well, and Assistant Professors, and Michelle Castleberry, Co-founder of Patient Community Simulators, PCS, and Juliana Sampson, a PhD student, working closely together with the PCS organization. Uniquely for our audiences today and for our partners of Coventry University and of EBN and our member community, the EUBICs, the experts from Coventry University will showcase ideas, experience, and innovative solutions utilizing cutting-edge immersive technology and application. And that is an understatement. I've seen the presentation and it looks very promising what we'll have today. Once again, maybe some house rules could be redundant, but we've been used to this already. During the session, please make sure that your microphone is muted. During the presentations, that said, open it up during the Q&A. You can place your questions in the chat. And again, it's an interactive session, so we'll be very happy to answer your questions in the Q&A section afterwards. A quick recap. We'll see, or looking forward to the agenda of today, we'll have a quick introduction about EBN. Then I hand over to Paul. We'll give a quick introduction of Coventry. And when I say quick, it's really quick. It's between 3 and 5 minutes, so hang in there. And then we dive straight into the experts, which will entertain us definitely with the content today of roughly 45 minutes. These are XR healthcare experts. So no question is too far reached. If we don't have the answer, I'm sure we can get back to you. And then we'll provide us with ample use cases in their presentation. On that note, let me not take too much time and I move quickly on to the introduction about EBN. I do believe with society grappling for solutions in our uncertain time, there's no doubt that innovative technology is destined to be central to solving our global and also our local challenges. In response to this call, EBN serves organizations that use business and innovation as a force for regional sustainable economic development and as well social development. Our members, called EUBICs and associate members, are recognizable through their excellent performance and the EUBIC quality certification. And we connect them in the EUBIC community. So the quality certified EUBICs, they are typically characterized by using the best possible actions to create thriving startups and SMEs. You can find them in a range of industries from space, deep tech, AI, medtech, healthcare, smart materials, agri-food, transportation, and so forth. But a key feature of them is that they take real steps to ensure that their services are best advantageous to their clients and best advantageous to the regions they operate in. So there's a strong link with the regional innovation ecosystems always. Quick snapshot as of today, as of this year, I don't know what the number is today, but as of this year, there are more than 160 quality certified EUBICs in our network and associate members, covering roughly 35 countries, mostly concentrated in Europe, but shaping a global community of EUBICs. EUBICs typically, so the EU certified business incubation centers, cover a diverse background, ranging from being accelerators, incubators, science parks, to academia, to technology transfer organizations. Yet diverse as they are, they rally around our community's 4 specific mission commitments, which are, let me see if I can jump the slide up as well, so you can, there we go. As seen on the slide, regional economic development, delivery of quality business support, and we stimulate that by sharing learning from the community from one to one other, and that works. We're always proud to say on behalf of our members that their startups supported by EU BICs outperform the survival rates of an EU average incubator and accelerator, quite a bit. Well, I think it's 87% for the EU BICs compared to 60 something for the EU average. We're very proud to see always that the companies get through the first 3 years and even the 5 years more successfully if they're supported by an EU BIC. Third, mission commitment, access to finance. We network, of course, as is natural, with an innovation network and entrepreneur network. We network as well the investor community to the incubators and the startups. Quickly let in some participants. And first and lastly, scaling European innovation. I do believe if you're a pan-European global community, we seek to foster the scaling of European innovation among our members, but also across the innovation ecosystem in Europe. I will speed up because I realize that it's much longer than 3 minutes. Sorry, Paul. I will give you your total 5 minutes if you want. And I know you're a bit more quick there, but so what about EBN, the European Business and Innovation Center Network? We facilitate and support this rich pan-European global community of people using innovative business as a driver for regional sustainable economic development. We have a set of services that we offer to our members, and we're very proud to have Coventry University among our member base as well. And it leads to this kind of inspiring collaborations, but also new deal flow. We see, I think Paul will tap into that in a moment as well. We've seen before that these kind of webinars are actually a good breeding ground for new collaborations. So feel free if you see a possibility to connect with Coventry University and the healthcare faculty, or Coventry University enterprise in that sense. Feel free to reach out to them. We will share their contact details afterwards. Back to EBN, we have activities, what I mentioned already. We have the EU BIC certificate. We're the only organization that has an EU a recognized label by the European Commission that measures the quality of the performance of incubators and accelerators. We do a fair share of training and knowledge sharing, mostly about, of course, supporting business entrepreneurial innovators, startups, scale-ups, etc. We facilitate project collaborations, global networking, and advocacy for excellent business support actors like the EU BICs. In this context, and now I'm wrapping up, EU BIC community and our partners are pleased to collaborate with Coventry University, making Europe and the UK the hub for solving our global challenges, powered by research, innovation, technology, and the ingenuity of the entrepreneurial innovators and the people in the session today. On this note, I'm more than happy to give the word to Paul.
Thank you, Bram. And good afternoon, everybody. Great to see you all here, and some very familiar faces. So thank you for joining. I will be really quick, Bram, actually. So I'm Paul, Innovation Director, as Bram said, at Coventry University. I'm also an EBN board member. So we have a long-standing relationship with EBN for the last 20 years plus. And our Brussels office is actually co-located with the EBN team. You're going to hear in a minute some fantastic stories from my colleagues, but I just wanted to give you a very, very quick overview of Coventry University Group, just to give you a flavour of who we are, what we're about, and why we're involved today, some of which you'll hear through the presentations later. But effectively, we started as a College of Design in 1843, became a polytechnic in 1970, and then a fully fledged university in 1992. So we have a really strong technical background. We provide education to 50,000 students across the globe now, and we have 4 key themes within our overall 2030 strategy. Education and student experience is the first and the most obvious, delivering education to meet student and employer needs. Research and impact is the second key strand, about challenge-led transdisciplinary research that addresses real world issues. We're a global university, so excitingly, we've got hubs in Brussels, as I mentioned, but also in Singapore, Dubai, and most recently, Rwanda. And then finally, I guess my core area within the university group is enterprise and innovation. So we work with business in the community, to support innovation, entrepreneurship, startups, scale-ups, and economic development. So hopefully that gives you a really quick overview of who we are, a sense of who we are and why we're here. I'm sure you'll find the session really enjoyable, enriching, and exciting. So I'm going to give the floor now to Abby, who we're going to switch slides just to pick up, and we'll come back with a close at the end. Abby, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks very much, Paul. So welcome everyone to today's webinar, and thank you for joining us. In this webinar, we will be examining the approach that our faculty, so the Faculty of Health and Life Sciences, is taking in terms of the enhancement of healthcare simulation, and as already mentioned, with a particular focus on the use of technological advancements such as extended reality. So my name is Abigail Green. I'm pictured here on the left alongside my colleagues who are on the call as well. I'm Assistant Professor in Health Simulation at Coventry University, and I will be giving a brief overview of healthcare simulation at Coventry University. So what does our team look like? What do our facilities look like? The campuses that we deliver healthcare simulation to, and what is our strategy for enhancing this healthcare simulation through the use of extended reality. I'm then going to be joined by Juliana Sampson, a doctorate student in the Centre for Healthcare Research, and our industry colleague, Michelle Castleberry, which we're delighted to have with us today, who's the co-founder of Patient Communication Simulators. And they're going to discuss their proof of concept collaborative project using artificially intelligent avatars, particularly looking at interprofessional healthcare simulation. So Juliana and Michelle will explore that some more with us today. Then we've got Mark Gilby, doctorate student in the Centre for Healthcare Research also, who will follow this to explore his proof of concept project, looking at the use of haptics in healthcare simulation and his collaboration with industry with haptics. And then my colleague Sam Clark is going to wrap up our session with our vision for future healthcare simulation curriculum design. So just before we kick off with what health simulation looks like at Coventry University and the strategy that we're looking at taking to enhance this with extended reality, I just wanted to give you a little bit more information in terms of a background to myself. So as I previously mentioned, I'm Assistant Professor in Health Simulation here at Coventry University. And in this role, I support the delivery of simulation across the Faculty of Health and Life Sciences, but also our wider Coventry University group. So I'm going to be delving into that a little bit more when we're thinking about one of our particular focuses is accessibility of the resources that we develop to all our students across all of our campuses. So I'm also a clinician by background, so I'm a registered dietitian, and I'm an educator with so a combined experience in education and as a clinician of 13 years. So who are we at Coventry? So Coventry University simulation team is made up of myself and Sam, who are here on the webinar today with us. And we've also got our curriculum lead, Dr. Natasha Taylor, and our other assistant professor colleague, Andy Winter. So our team is made up of a group of 4 clinicians from varied clinical backgrounds. So we've got adult nursing, children's nursing, paramedic science, and myself as a dietitian. So we bring varied clinical experiences to help support the delivery of healthcare simulation across the different healthcare students that we have at Coventry. There is a QR code there just below our picture that you can scan, and that will take you to our website where you can read more about our team, our different areas of interest. We also have world-class facilities in our Alison Gingell building, which was opened by William and Kate in January 2018. And again, there's a QR code below this where you can scan that and you can have a tour around our Alison Gingell building. This gives our students an opportunity to learn in situations that mirror real life scenarios, and our students can take risks, innovate and experience situations that are made to feel as real as possible and learn in a secure and inspiring environment. And as I said, our role within our team is to support the delivery and support the innovation of the resources that we develop, to be able to deliver that across our campuses where our healthcare students are studying. So we've got campuses in Coventry, London and Scarborough. And often when we're looking at these innovations, we're thinking about the scalability and the accessibility of that. And I believe that that's something that my colleagues on the webinar today will explore in terms of how some of these resources with extended reality can be scaled across campuses to our students. So before I go further and delve into kind of the focus of today's session, which is our strategy and how we are approaching the emerging technology and extended reality and embedding this into our healthcare simulation curriculum, I wanted to share with you one of my favorite quotes about technology and education, because I think it really sets the scene for what we are wanting to discuss here today. So this quote is, "Technology will never replace good teachers, but technology in the hands of a great teacher can be transformational." So really what we're sharing with you today is really how we see healthcare simulation being transformed, how we see our students' education being transformed through the use of extended reality. So this is the final part of my section before I hand over to my colleagues to talk about some of the really exciting proof of concept projects that we're working on. But what I wanted to really focus on is our strategy and our healthcare simulation, the way we do it at Coventry, is really focused on our students at the centre. So focusing on developing our practice-ready healthcare graduates and empowering our students to transform their lives and also those around them, so the society around them. So we are very much about embracing innovation and technological advancements. And our process is really a cyclical approach where we're embracing the innovation and technology that is coming out. This often is involved with identifying funding streams to help us do that and collaboration with industry partners. And we're going to talk about 2 examples of that today through our proof of concept projects. And this involves working with stakeholders. So maybe that might be our practice partners, it might be service users, it may be some of our students and experts from the technological aspect as well. So our team is mainly made up of clinicians, but we need to collaborate with those that are working in industry to make sure we are developing the right resources for our students. And in this way, we are able to reflect the fast pace of healthcare, reflect the fast pace of technological advancements as well. So we're able to keep up to speed with advancements. And as I said previously, we're always focusing on that accessibility, the sustainability of the resources that we develop and the scalability and being able to focus on enterprise as well with the end product. And then we are able then in this way to look at developing our proof of concept projects and our research test bed to actually test out some of these new emerging technologies and see what the impact is on our students' learning. So with that, I would like to hand over to Juliana, who's going to talk about one of our proof of concept projects.
Thanks, Abby, for that introduction. I'm a physiotherapist by profession with 20 years clinical experience. My research considers artificial intelligence for interprofessional education. But before we explore this proof of concept project, I want to share with you why I'm undertaking this work. From my time with the Ministry of Defence, I learned of the importance of building a systems mindset at every level of an organisation, From big picture systems to local ecosystems, it's important to instill in all team members that their part is key to the whole. In healthcare, this is with the person at the centre. My experience is that this rule applies to every sector, be it the forces, my private work, the NHS and social care, and higher education in the workplace where I find myself contributing now. COVID has forced rapid innovation. We all know this in information systems, infrastructure, policy alignment, all toward joined up work and supported by digital. At the time of the pandemic, students in workplace training had to cease face-to-face participation in placements. Fortunately, for Coventry students, they were able to switch to case-based online learning. Pictured here is a virtual simulated placement. This WordPress site houses the multimedia elements of image, sound clip, text, video links to trusted sources and quizzes. Information is laid out for the students to navigate. So here you can meet Sarah, you could click on the icon to listen to her story and read her handover below. So we start with Sarah Potter is an 80-year-old woman who had a fall at home. This is a great tool for novice learners who need the information push. But if we want students to practice their history taking skills, we want them to pull, we want them to draw out the case information, then conversational AI is the tool of choice. Now meet Sarah as a proof of concept in the development with PCS Spark. She has 2 points of care in her pathway pictured here, her acute 2-day hospital stay for her wrist surgery and her follow-up at home 10 weeks later. Let's have a chat with Sarah at home.
Hi there, Sarah. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay, thank you.
And how are you managing now at home?
I struggle to get things done around the house. I just can't do my housework and shopping by myself anymore.
Would you consider help for this?
I don't want to be a burden on my sister and neighbor anymore. So maybe it's time to get help.
Does this replicate conversations with real people? No, that's not the intended purpose. The student leads this conversation, which is just what's needed when there's a stack of questions to remember, recall, and you can pause and reflect and repeat in this scenario. The ability to follow a person's key concern as it matters to them, and then cover all the questions that you have in your head and put the answers in the correct mental boxes and process them real time, is a skill called paralleling. And it takes thousands of hours to learn. So why not clock these up on an avatar to be used on a student's phone, for example, in a space of psychological safety? So when they meet a person like Sarah in real life, they are more skilled at the conversation. On admission, it's clear that Sarah Potter's case is complex and she needs input from all these professions during her hospital stay. Sarah can also chat with these professionals on a community follow-up. This learning resource could be shared across courses and used to bring together students to learn with, from, and about each other to improve collaboration and joined-up care. Now, let's remember that whilst Sarah, an individual with what we call frailty syndrome, represents 4% of the UK population, but they occupy 40% of the bed spaces. Now, this clearly is going to have a knock-on effect to admissions, and this demonstrates the imperative of a joined-up NHS and social care service, and frailty needs to be proactively managed in the community here. Now, thankfully, integrated care services and GP-led falls clinics are in place as of January this year. And we at Coventry have the technology and a cohort of students who are supported in developing a systems mindset. Finally, I'd like to thank the students listed here, the staff in both Coventry and our neighbouring University Warwick, our NHS partners, and PCS developers for their contributions. And I will now hand over to Michelle from PCS.
Thank you, Juliana. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle Castleberry, as the slide says. Currently within PCS, I oversee our advisory board of clinicians, and I lead our sim scenario programming team, which is how I began working closely with Coventry University and Juliana. But to rewind a bit, nearly 8 years ago, my co-founders and I were working at a mannequin-based simulation company, and we felt that the next frontier of simulation healthcare was virtual reality, paired with artificial intelligence. So we started PCS to focus specifically on extended reality. And in fact, I really like that term extended reality because of its inclusiveness. XR includes technologies that makes VR and AR realities possible, like artificial intelligence. And I would also add that screen-based simulations using AI falls into this XR category. To add to the advantages of simulation that Juliana mentioned, like the student's ability to log in from anywhere, from any time, and just like a game, play over and over and over again within a very short period of time, demand on the Sim Center and the faculty is low because it's an autonomous exercise. Of course, the trade-off with screen-based is that it may not feel as immersive. VR, however, offers the most immersive experience, which can lead to higher engagement, higher retention. It's slightly more resource intensive, as headsets are often located within simulation centers themselves and may require staff assistance and oversight. However, with that said, as headsets become more ubiquitous, this could change and offer similar accessibility to that of screen-based. Everyone has a smartphone, everyone has a personal computer, why not a headset too? But across both delivery platforms, Spark uses advanced machine learning and AI within the context of a clinical encounter. In other words, a health profession student conducts a medical interview with a virtual patient that is powered by AI. So the natural follow-up question that I get is, okay, so how does this work? When PCS Spark patient is asked a verbal question, as we saw in Juliana's video, 4 main components jump immediately into action and work within milliseconds to give a scenario-appropriate and verbal response. Let's take, for example, a student introduction. Hello, Ms. Smith. It's nice to see you. How can I help you today? Voice activity detection begins, and advanced recognition services, or advanced speech recognition services, also known as speech to text more commonly, which is actually trained by billions of smartphone users every day, transcribes the entire introduction, statement, and question right into the simulations, into the simulation log. Then the PCS grammatical analyzer steps in to identify the question that's in need of answering, the "how can I help you" part. Now it's the neural network classifier's turn, which gets trained on a rapidly growing data set of clinical interview questions and connects to the topic that the AI is most confident about. Finally, a response is verbalized using speech synthesis and says, the patient says, "I've been having these really bad headaches for the past few days," or anything you want to program in. Every one of these components that you see listed here uses neural networks that are constantly trained to improve their performance. Of course, AI has yet to pass the Turing test. On the spectrum, on the AI spectrum, all AI today is considered to be narrow or weak AI. Nobody knows when or if we'll even see like strong AI, for example, let alone artificial superintelligence. So we at PCS continue to work to enhance our neural networks through training and reinforcement learning from human feedback. And we accomplish this 2 ways. The first of which is providing the AI with parameters and questions, manually adding a few questions that we anticipate the learner might ask as it relates to that topic, kind of like guardrails on a bowling alley. And the second way is through verbal interviews, where questions that are unknown to the AI are flagged and then manually connected to the topic by me or a member of my team. So AI is not a new thing. The newly gained capabilities of computers, though, as a result of recent AI developments using machine learning, is indeed nothing short of absolutely spectacular. But don't worry, we are still quite far from sentient or self-aware machine learning. Thank you, Julianne. Thank you, Abby.
Hi, thank you. Nice to meet you all today. My name is Mark Gilby, and it's great to be here to present some of the innovative stuff we're doing at Coventry University. My research is looking at the use of extended reality haptics in healthcare education, and specifically on hands-on care. And just for clarity, for people who may not have heard of haptics, haptics is a term used to define the sense of touch mediated by technology. Throughout this presentation, I'll try and highlight a few companies that you might find interesting and their take on how they're using haptics in virtual reality. So a bit about me. My background is as a physiotherapist, a bit like Juliana. I work clinically at South Warwickshire Foundation Trust, which is an NHS trust in the UK, as an advanced clinical practitioner. And this is an advanced clinical role, but it's also an advanced role within the development of education, leadership and research. Alongside that role, I also work part-time at Coventry University as an assistant professor in teaching advanced clinical practice. And there are many systemic challenges we're facing both in the NHS and in higher education institutes in delivering quality hands-on education. And I encounter these challenges to healthcare education daily, both within my university role and my clinical role. But these are the same challenges that I encountered as an undergraduate many years ago. And this really made me want to initiate change and explore what other technologies might be out there to try and help the modern day student and our future workforce. And this led me down to into my PhD, which I'm excited to share with you. And so far I've been extremely well received by students and colleagues, both academically at the university, but also clinically. And the research is constantly expanding. Much to the dismay of my wife, but it is now such a fertile ground to be looking at haptics in extended reality. Currently, there's a massive drive and need to integrate digital technology into the NHS and into education. But this is purely reliant on a wide range of professions, both technological and clinical. And this is really difficult, almost impossible for our modern day clinician, given the busy and overworked healthcare system, especially within the UK. I'm very fortunate to have the ability to do this. And I now act as a supporter and an advocate for haptics in healthcare education, but also an active researcher and exploring clinically focused questions, which in turn I feel are translatable and relatable to our modern day healthcare workforce. I believe we need leaders and role models in such technologies with clinical understanding to be at the forefront and partner technological companies in the innovation of our future healthcare system. This is really important if we want to grow workforce adopters, which in turn then drives the interest in innovation and eventually a shift in the culture of how healthcare education is delivered. So what I want to do now is briefly talk to you about our human senses and the importance of this within extended reality. Next slide, please, Abby. So neuroscience is fascinating, but very briefly, since you're a fetus, you have learned to survive and thrive through 5 main senses, those being hearing, taste, smell, sight, and for me, most importantly, touch. This is what we term a natural multisensory learning experience. And there's been a massive drive in the innovation and development of visual and auditory feedback in extended reality. We can now hear really immersive sounds and see real super imagery. And these experiences are becoming widely accessible through products such as the Oculus Quest, for example. But if we want to produce a truly immersive XR experience, a Matrix-style experience, and feel present in extended reality, we need to drive innovation and integrate those other senses into XR, mirroring that of our natural multisensory learning experience. The impact of a multisensory XR experience, I believe, could transform how we deliver not just healthcare education, but education generally, amongst lots of other things. And this made me think clinically, if we could produce a virtual scenario which could expose students to practice clinical decision-making, but now also add that sense of natural touch or haptics to feel things like patients' pathologies, train muscle memory and practice clinical skills, allows students to practice with real-time feedback prior to even touching a patient, would this aid in knowledge uptake? Will it improve the hands-on skills translation and improve both a patient's and a clinician's experience? There's so many questions that have come with this. In aviation, for instance, pilots use simulation prior to even touching a plane, which begs the question, should we be doing something similar for our students before they even touch a patient? Put yourself in a patient's shoes. If you were a patient in pain and fearful what was going wrong, how would you feel if a student wanted to practice on you for their first time? I'll leave that with you. Next slide, please. Now let's talk a little bit about touch or haptics. Remember, this is the sense of touch mediated by technology. And haptic feedback can be split into two categories. Firstly, tactile, meaning sensation, and kinesthetic, referring to the ability to provide forces. And for ease, you can provide haptic technology then into four categories. There's the vibro-tactile, and this stimulates the user using vibrations. This is by far the most common type of haptics you'll find, ranging from gaming controllers, smartwatches, phones, all the way to VR peripheral devices like gloves or vests. A good example of a company using this technology in a haptic vest would be that of B-Haptics or Electronica. We then have contact spatial. Again, another form of tactile feedback. This provides sensation through the user's experience with surface contact, usually via electrical stimulation or skin deformation. A good example of a company using this technology in a screen-based device to feel textures would be that of Tanbus. We then have non-spatial, and these are sensations experienced without any physical contact with the user at all. Ultrasound is a good example of this, and Ultraleap would be a good company to follow if you're interested in this type of haptic technology. And haptic and kinesthetic feedback. This gives us the ability to feel forces or resistance. And most haptic gloves have this technology. A good example of a company using this form of technology is SenseGlove. There's also thermal tactile feedback, so hot and cold. I haven't included that in this slide, but again, another company to look at there would be someone like WeArt. And all of these companies, there's many more I could give, are really amazing examples of haptic technologies and wearable devices. But before you go and find the most attractive haptic device for your user case, I'd highly recommend thinking about how the haptic device and technology best fits your objectives. And this depends on how you want haptics to support your XR scenario. When I spoke to haptic companies and explained what my objectives were within my research of providing realistic tactile feedback, the only company which could attempt to provide this was a company that I've had fortunate to have continual support from. And they're one of the world leaders in XR haptics, a USA-based company founded by an amazing mind in Jake Rubin called Haptex. And they produce an excellent haptic glove. And I'd like to take a little bit of time to talk about haptic gloves in general and Haptex. Next slide, please. So haptic gloves are a way we can naturally immerse the user in extended reality to interact with the virtual object in a natural and a transferable way. In healthcare, for example, this could be a patient. Haptics state that they produce the most realistic touch feedback haptic glove, which just so happens to look really cool too. And inside each glove, rather than vibration actuators, they use their patented microfluidic smart textile, which provides over 130 points of true contact tactile feedback per glove, which is high fidelity and gives a natural displacement of the skin across each of the user's palms and their fingers. The microfluidic textile is here pictured in the center. And these are like small bubbles that can individually inflate and deflate rapidly via a compressed air unit, which is on a backpack in the top left-hand corner there. It looks like a bit like a Ghostbuster. And this gives realistic tactile feedback. And there's also attached to this glove a force feedback exoskeleton on the back of each glove, which provides up to 40 pounds of resistance force feedback to simulate the size and the rigidity of objects in XR. And finally, electromagnetic motion capture. This provides really precise hand tracking. This product here is their new G1 glove, and that's due to be released later on this year. But I was lucky enough last year to use their DK2 glove, and it was an amazing experience. And I could talk to you hours about that. Time constraints, I've only got 10 minutes, so I'll best hurry with that one. For haptics, though, to develop within healthcare, We need to develop an awareness of this technology and its potential. And only this will encourage innovation and research, but also the quality and then scalability of such a device. No different to what we've witnessed in visual feedback or auditory feedback. And to do this, I feel having a clinician as a haptic advocate is the most trustworthy voice for healthcare providers to listen to. Next slide, please. A really important part of creating this user case is to understand the audience. And this is where having a clinician at the heart of driving the research has allowed for a clearer picture to how haptics could be utilised in our research. I am the audience, I'm the clinician, I'm the educator, and I'm now back as a student, and I'm now becoming that advocate, that promoter of haptics. I believe what helped my collaboration and communication with all of these companies that I was fortunate to talk to was exactly this. So my doctoral research question is, can we simulate clinical scenarios with haptic feedback that benefit the student's education? And does this positively translate into their clinical practice? We are now in the midst of creating that proof of concept virtual user case to explore its potential value with our team at Coventry University, supported by haptics. Next slide, please. But to ensure an evidence-informed user case is created, we currently have a worldwide survey to explore clinicians, students and educators' perspectives on haptics in healthcare, their potential barriers and enablers, and seeking their thoughts on the most valuable hands-on clinical cases to include haptics to evaluate its impact. If you haven't seen this already, if you are a healthcare student, a clinician or an educator watching this today, please take time to support the development of haptics in healthcare education by filling out this survey and follow our journey through LinkedIn or Twitter. I honestly believe that this has the potential to transform and revolutionise modern day healthcare education, providing priceless experience without any risk of patient safety or unnecessary stresses. My quest now is to continue to fly the flag for haptics with use within education, not just healthcare. And I'd like to take the time now to thank all those haptic companies that have led me and helped shape my thoughts, especially the team at Haptics. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Mark, for that really interesting presentation. So my name's Sam Clark. I'm an assistant professor at Coventry University. I'm relatively new to the simulation team. My background's adult nursing, and I've worked in the NHS and higher education institutes for over 20 years. And my main role within Coventry University is I lead virtual simulated placements. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that, kind of highlight how we're developing them and how we're using extended reality within that. So I've just got a brief kind of definition of what virtual simulated placements is there. So I'll just give you the time to read that, and I'll just kind of explain why they've come into place and why they've become really important. So one of the challenges at the moment with the NHS and health and social care is that there's a huge recruitment crisis. So there's over 100,000 jobs that we haven't fulfilled at the moment. So as a result, the government, the Department of Health, etc., are trying to get universities to increase their health and social care courses. So, for instance, increase the numbers of student nurses they train, physios, etc. So, as a university, you may be able to increase student capacity for your various undergraduate degrees, but you've then got to then offer effective placements for students with that additional numbers. So, the challenge with the factor with placements, again, that some people might not be aware of, is that if you're doing an undergraduate degree in a health and social care course, you're expected to do X number of placement hours on top of your theory hours in placement in order to become a nurse, a physio, an OT. So, for instance, in nursing, you need to do 2,300 placement hours on top of 2,300 theory hours. So if you increase your student intake by 25-30%, you've then got to find additional placements for those students. So then the challenge is, as we're aware, the NHS and health and social care is going through very difficult time, and potentially staff are burnt out. So how are they going to cope with these additional students that they've got to support? So a way to kind of increase student capacity is develop virtual simulated placements, and these effectively we ensure that the learning outcomes are aligned to placement. Students undertake a virtual simulated placement for a period of time, and rather than getting theory hours for this, they get placement hours. So we're not suggesting that these replace placements, they're just used in conjunction with placements and as a way of increasing placement capacity predominantly. Next slide, please, Abby. So there's various ways we can implement them. So we've got a really well-established blended nursing program within Coventry University. So this is an online only degree or master's route for students wanting to become a registered nurse. And the idea, or what happens within those programs, is when they have a block of 8-week placement 2 times a year, they have a week of virtual simulated placement. So what we do is we develop an online kind of theory that aligns to their placement outcomes. Students work through this online module and they have a facilitated session, and then those hours and potentially learning outcomes contribute towards their placement hours. We could develop it differently, where we don't have a facilitated session, we just do it purely online, and we could do potentially a few weeks or a few hours or a day. There's other methods where, for instance, if you've got a set placement, so maybe children's nurses have to do a health visiting placement and you've got very limited health visitors placements available to you, you could potentially incorporate a VSP to allow students to go on your health visiting placement over a period of a placement or term or year, or really whatever works best for the course. So we'll happily kind of adapt them to the undergraduate degree for whatever they feel is appropriate. Next slide, please, Abby. So effectively how we develop VSPs is we use a program called WordPress, which is kind of basically we develop a web page for it. And we try and ensure that it's not just like an e-learning module. So ways to kind of get that extended reality within it is we create things like discussion boards. So we ask students to answer a question at a set time, to hopefully try and generate some debate and discussion with the group. We incorporate PCS, which we've already spoken about, patient communication simulator. So we could have some background reading on frailty, for instance, and then the student does the PCS, and hopefully that kind of aligns their kind of learning to practice. We often do audio recordings. So again, we often create a scenario or a case study, and we try and make it interactive. So often like an academic or act as the patient or the member of staff, and perhaps we could do a phone consultation, or a patient's making a complaint as an example that we've done, and students can actually hear that rather than just reading about it, and as a result they hopefully kind of can identify with it. The image in the top right corner is a 360 image. We try and embed these within the WordPress site. So the example is a theatre. So again, not all students may not get the opportunity to go into theatres as a placement. And again, we can kind of show them what a theatre would look like and highlight what the different equipments are and what they're used for, etc. And hopefully as a result, they'll have a better understanding of that, despite them not actually having it. We obviously provide links to appropriate websites and articles for them to further read. We use a lot of YouTube videos predominantly. We kind of embed them into the web page, and this is an example of Khan Academy for an anatomy and physiology kind of video. And then we can test the students as they go along, and we can create that to hopefully demonstrate their learning and understanding of the material that they've done. So another aspect that has happened at Coventry University is that Vodafone installed this amazing 5G network. I think we were the first university in the country where they did that, which obviously offered really amazing uploading and downloading speeds. And then they worked in conjunction with a IT software program, and they developed this anatomy and physiology I think they just did one system, which was a lymphatic system, as a proof of concept idea. And then what happened, a member of staff wearing a VR headset used this program, immersed themselves in it, and kind of really showed them the lymphatic system in detail, kind of interacting with it. And the students fed back that it was a really great, useful tool to aid their learning. And students did it online because, as I've already highlighted, a lot of our modules, or a percentage of our modules, are done online. So they access the learning through Teams or Zoom. There was a slight challenge with this, though, is that the slight challenge was that the internet connection was great at the Coventry site, and if students were there, they would be able to see the program really well. But because they were often using it at home, their internet connection wasn't as good, so there was some lagging as a result, and it wasn't perhaps successful as it potentially could have been. But I think this is a kind of an example of perhaps where the ideas there, but technology perhaps isn't at the same level. And maybe if we did this in a 2 or 3 years' time, where people hopefully would have better internet speed at home, then it would be you know, a really great idea and something that potentially grow, especially with programs such as anatomy and physiology. Thanks, Abby. So we're always looking to enhance our virtual simulated placements, and when I felt when I first started, they felt often a bit more like an e-learning kind of module, where it was sometimes difficult to see the VR side of it, or the extended reality side. So we're looking at purchasing more kind of extended reality software. So these are some kind of VR programs. So the idea maybe is that you have a case study on sepsis, for instance, where the students work through the theory of sepsis, how to identify it, how to treat it, and then they'd access one of these external companies who've developed this software, and then they'd actually have a go at treating someone with sepsis. And again, a lot of these programs will then provide feedback to the student, highlighting what they did well, what they didn't do well. And one of the factors that we're really keen in is whenever we invest in software, is that it has to have an editing function, because we want to create our own scenarios. And we don't just work for one discipline, i.e. nursing, we work across multiple professions, which Abby's already highlighted. So there may be a case study that we would like to adapt slightly so that it would be relevant for paramedicine, for instance. So rather being in a hospital setting, we could create it that it's in a home setting so that it's realistic for those students. And then the image in the top right corner is an immersive space. So again, what we're looking at doing is creating kind of simulation exercises that we could deliver potentially online. So this is projectors that are in like a classroom, and then you can import whatever 360 image you want. So you could create a simulation in a hospital setting, in a road traffic accident, for instance, or in someone's home. And then we could potentially run the simulation through, and then students could watch that online, and then we could obviously facilitate that afterwards. And I think that's a really good idea for those online modules that we offer, where students don't get the opportunity to physically come into a classroom and carry out a simulation. Next slide, please, Abby. So like anything, there's benefits and challenges to VSPs. So the main benefit is that it hopefully increases placement capacity, so we can recruit more students, and as a result, we can increase the number of students for certain degrees, which is obviously, from a university perspective, will generate more income. Also, from a society perspective, we're hopefully fulfilling the need for more nurses, more physios, and we're hoping to combat that issue. They do generally get very positively evaluated by students, and I think one of the main reasons is that they can undertake them in their own time, and you know, students may want to do it at 2 a.m. That's not an issue for them to work through them then. And like I said, we're optimizing the professional body guidelines, saying about how much simulated hours you can do. So for instance, nursing, the Nursing Midwifery Council say that 600 hours can be simulated. And again, the advantages of creating simulated learning. So for instance, you can provide a safe environment, you can encourage errors. You know, you'd much prefer a student making an error in a simulated environment, the facilitator highlighting that they've made a mistake, and hopefully they've learned from it rather than them doing it on a patient in a real life or in a clinical situation. Like anything, there's challenges. There's obviously the increased workload now for the academic staff, so they're obviously now supporting students who would normally have been in placement. Sometimes courses may need to be revalidated, so because you've changed how their placement hours are allocated, the professional body has got to basically say that they're happy for you to do VSPs. And again, that can be quite a time-consuming process sometimes to go through revalidation. Like anything, there's maybe some resistance from staff. A lot of people generally don't like change, do they? Sometimes students, not so much from students, but placement providers maybe. And one of the factors is that you get paid for going into placement, the placement provider. So they are potentially losing a limited amount, some income from students now going into university to do that part rather than that. Like anything, they take a large amount of time to develop and create, especially if you're aligning it to obviously placement outcomes. You know, it's not like a short fix solution. And again, as a team, we spent a lot of time in this area developing them and always looking to enhance them. Again, if you're purchasing additional IT software to obviously enhance them, the IT software can be quite expensive. So again, it's about ensuring that they are used as much as possible if you are going to purchase them. And then obviously you're reliant on external companies. So for instance, like I've said, we use WordPress. If their server goes down, we'd be in a difficult situation to how we're going to run that VSP for that week. Next slide, Abby. So I think that's the end of the presentation. So we're more than happy to take any questions. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you found it interesting and useful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you, Abigail, and the rest of the team. I think there has been, at least we try to put some fire up in the chat already. Maybe we are running tight, which was expected, but I do believe we still have some time. So feel free again to post your questions in the chat. Let me take this first one, and then we'll hand over to Paul or maybe to the participants. A question for Abby in the chat. Can you give a bit more insight how the students of Coventry University, and I think the regular students, but also maybe the doctorate students that were presenting here in the session, how do they respond to this way of learning and collaborating? And the second part of the question is what future changes we are likely to see in terms of using simulation in healthcare education?
I can start with kind of the student experience, and I might hand over to Mark and Juliana for future, kind of where we might see it in the future. If I give an example, we released some scenarios to our dietetic students using the patient communication simulator on Monday this week. And the feedback was that they're excited, they are happy to be trying something new like this. And I think especially the patient communication simulator, as Michelle said, they can go and do that at any time. So I've been checking on progress this week, and I can see that perhaps after their lectures in the evenings, they're going home and they're doing a half-an-hour session or an hour session practicing with a patient at home. So yeah, in general, I think they're excited. They want to keep up to speed with what they're hearing about. You know, they're hearing about technological advancements. They want that to be reflected in their education. And I think maybe Mark and Juliana might be able to add to the second part of that question.
Yes, sorry, I'm just in the middle of something. Sorry, guys. Second part of the question, would you mind just repeating that?
So I think the second part of the question, Mark and Juliana, was about where we see it going in the future in terms of healthcare simulation.
Yes, I'm quite happy to answer that. I think really from a physiotherapy background, simulation's been very medic heavy. So I think now's the time as AHPs, nurses, we really try and widen the awareness of what simulation can bring to the table. And again, that comes down to us as clinicians or as academics to really showcase what that can do. There's lots of VR tools out there, devices out there that look amazing, but we need robust research and we need robust evidence to showcase that. And I think that's where me and Juliana, as well as the simulation team, are really at the forefront to try and push that. Juliana, do you want to add anything to that?
No, you've covered that.
So we've had another question in the chat. Thanks, guys. A really good question from, I think it's Araya. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly, but for Sam, I think, actually. So with the current situation of lack of nursing staff, I wonder if there's a danger that virtual placements might be more fun to the students as compared to the real environment. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah. From my experience, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think you've got to bear in mind, like for nursing, the NMC say that only 600 hours out of the 2,300 can be simulated. So I think that's around 25%. We do give them a lot of work to go through for that week of work. I'd feel quite uncomfortable if it was seen as an easy week, if that makes sense. And, you know, I feel that quite strongly that if they're getting 40 hours of placement, then that needs to be replicated in the VSP, if that makes sense. But yeah, I kind of understand maybe from the extra the IT software that we use, it could be seen as fun. And I guess that's always sometimes a challenge when you do simulation with students, that they don't see how it's realistic, and sometimes, or not realistic, but they don't see it necessarily related to placement, and they may perhaps not act in the same way. And that's sometimes you have to do it 2 or 3 times for them to kind of get to the point where they realize that they need to take it seriously.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Sam. Mark, we've got a more technical question for you. So I think this is from David in the chat again, who said it's rather easy to confirm the accuracy of haptic feedback for mechanical applications. But what are your thoughts on how we will confirm that anatomical haptic feedback is accurately representing the behavior of human tissue? Great question.
I think that's a big area to look into in terms of research development. But I think if we go back to education and look at how we can use education within our healthcare sphere, I don't think we have to be too specific in terms of the biomechanical actions. If we've got good hand tracking now, and if we're looking at really how we integrate that into clinical hands-on skills, then really it's about the whole environment, not just haptics on its own. And I think if we think of haptics being the primary driver in the education, I think we've lost it. It's really there as a supportive tool within everything else. And that's where things like AI come in, virtuals come in, and audio comes in. That all has to come in as a group rather than just haptics on its own, although important.
Great. Thanks, Mark. And another question for Celine. Oh, actually, you just qualified. Thanks, Celine. This is for everybody. But could you tell us a bit more about the accessibility challenges you've come across and how you've managed them? Celine, I wonder if you wouldn't mind opening up your mic and just expanding on that question a little bit more. Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure. I'm really aware that there are a number of challenges for all disabilities or anyone with a sensory issues, and I can imagine even if somebody hasn't identified as being disabled, there are difficulties with feeling dizzy. I just wondered if you come across that and what you've done about it.
From my point of view, we have to ensure, because it's a web page, it's really important that it's accessible. So again, we've got to bear in mind that a lot of students may be accessing this through their phone as well, as a point. So we spend quite a lot of time, and we're very fortunate at Coventry University. We've got a group of staff called Educational Technologies, and they've kind of supported us in how we develop our web page to make sure that it is as accessible as possible. And again, when we look into purchasing some external IT software, we need to ensure that it is accessible, if that makes sense, like that they haven't got to necessarily download something, or that it's not so, the software isn't so advanced that only a limited number of students can access it. So that's from my point of view. I don't know if anyone else, guys, want to kind of highlight that because it's
from a more technical standpoint, frame rate is going to be really important with virtual reality headsets. You have to have a minimum frame rate as to avoid that cyber sickness or that feeling when you're in the headset that you're going to be sick. With most virtual patient experiences, you're pretty stationary and you're looking around versus, you know, when you put on a headset and you do like a roller coaster game or a zombie shooting game when there's lots of activity. So frame rate is really important when it comes to virtual reality. When it comes to the screen-based, very similar with accessibility there. I often think of connection speeds, like we talked about during the presentation. What type of internet speeds does the learner have at home or on their phone, et cetera? So making sure you have like a minimum kind of internet upload, download, megabits per second speed. Most technology companies should be pretty aware of that and make sure that the platforms that they're building will meet those specifications. And then to Sam's point, when it is screen-based, having accessibility, having it allowed.
Anybody else want to offer a view on that question, or I think we're covered, aren't we? Okay. Bram, do we have any more?
I think that's it. So this concludes the session, and thank you very much, speakers. Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Juliana. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Mark, and Paul. Of course, thank you, participants, for joining us. A quick note: we will share the recording shortly with you, and as well the slides. The contact details will be included there as well. If you have any questions following the session or see collaboration opportunities, feel free to reach out. That concludes the session of today. Thanks once again, and hope to see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, all.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.